problem 4, they're asking you to sketch the graph, and you can use a graphing utility, and by that they mean you could type in y equals sine of 7x and then type in the window to match each graph until you see one that clearly fits. And so, for instance, on the first one, you would type in a window from negative 2 pi to 2 pi, and you would do your scale by pi over 2, and your y values would go from, let's say, you could do just negative 7 to 7. But the idea is, I think on these problems, we're better off graphing it and then seeing what happens. So when I look at 7 to the x, I would do all my stuff off to the side. I know the amplitude is 1. There's an imaginary 1 in front of sine. Technically, there's a plus 0 at the end. And what that means is the midline is 0. And then I can identify my b value as 7. That's the number directly in front of x. That means the period of this function is 2 pi divided by 7. That's already a reduced fraction. And then if I do my spacing, which the critical points, the spacing would be 2 pi over 7 divided by 4. And so if you do this, it's like multiplying by 1/4. And I get 2 pi over 28, which reduces to pi over 14. So I will space them every pi over 14. And then we should check for a phase shift. And I can see that there's nothing being added or subtracted inside the parentheses, so there is no phase shift. So if I were to graph this thing, I would start by doing the phase shift. Well, because there's no phase shift, that means I'm going to start right on the y-axis at 0, and then this number right here, this what we call the CP, the critical point, are spaced every pi over 14. So the first one would be pi over 14. The next one would be 2 pi over 14, which would reduce to pi over 7. The next one would be 3 pi over 14. And then the next one would be 4 pi over 14, which would reduce to 2 pi over 7. And so when you look, well, then we can do the midline, right, is right on the x-axis. And because the amplitude is 1, I'd go up 1 and down 1. And this is a sine curve, so we'll start at the midline, and we'll go up, back to the midline, down. So sine always starts at the midline and goes up, and then we'll come back down. So it's going to look something like this. So when I look at this one and this one, they start at a maximum. So I know it's not those two. So I have to decide between the first and the last graph. And if you just look at the critical values, you can see that this would be the graph I would choose.